Hello everybody, welcome back to the Squids channel, and welcome if you're a first-time viewer. Guys, I had somebody recently ask me in the comments about how to visualize objects in 3D and how to break them into shapes, because they mentioned that they were having a hard time doing that. And by the way, by doing that, I will now teach you how to draw from imagination as well. So we'll start off with a simple object here, you'll see. And it's kind of deceptive though, in the sense that it is simple, it's just a sphere. But if you draw it like a circle, it'll end up being flat. We do need to start with a circle, of course, just getting the overall shape, but we need to convey the three-dimensionality of this form in some way. So we're going to actually analyze the different shapes that are running around this ball here. But first, we need to kind of visualize the three-dimensionality of the shape for ourselves to be able to really imagine how things curve. So that's what we're going to do now. A little bit messy here, give us a second, but just getting kind of like a midsection, a vague midsection. It's not perfect, but we're doing that so we can kind of see what the other side of the object might look like and envision how these forms run around the ball. After all, as things move in 3D space, they change, and that's what conveys the 3D feeling. So something I really want you guys to understand is that you don't necessarily have to be doing this by drawing, and in most cases you probably won't be doing that if you're doing it right, because as you're outside, just in general, you're going to be observing the things that you're looking at, paying a lot of attention if you want to grow quickly. You'll be looking at things like this soccer ball, for example, to start with, and later on more complex forms, and trying to break them down into their smaller pieces and wrap the pieces of them around them like these pentagons on the ball here, which you can then go on and use as a lesson to draw your own things. Like, for example, this sphere that I'm now drawing here, I'm going to turn into a simple head, like an angry emoji monster head thing. And you'll see that all the different forms on it are basically made out of these sort of rounded spherical forms and kind of other forms that are just wrapping around the general larger sphere in the same way that these pentagons wrap around the ball on the left and go farther off into space and become smaller and smaller and more sort of scrunched as they go into things and away from the viewer, and essentially convey that natural sense of three-dimensionality to the viewer, allowing everybody to perceive this sort of three-dimensionality and be drawn into the illusion, because that's what it is when you're drawing. You're creating these illusions, and the way you do that is by understanding real life, understanding these simple forms these complex things are made out of, which allows you to draw them in an interesting way, to draw them in an accurate way, and to draw them in a way that, again, convinces the audience. Fire hydrants are a great example of this, so that's why level 2 is a fire hydrant, because it's made up of all sorts of simple shapes. It looks really complicated, but I promise it's not. Let's break it down. So here we are, the fire hydrant. So first of all, we're going to turn the opacity down because the color doesn't matter and all that stuff doesn't matter. We're just trying to see the simple details here of what this form is made up of. And as you can see, I suck at drawing. I have absolutely no talent. So if I can do it, you can do it, guys. I'm super messy, and drawing straight lines in Krita is really annoying. I'm going to make a video on the benefits, like upsides, downsides of these programs at some point. I really like Krita because it's free. But anyway, you're going to draw through the forms just like we did before. Draw all the way through. Pretend you can see the other side. Don't worry, you're going to erase the lines later. And you don't have to do it for everything. Like, I didn't do it on the disc up top just because I can really envision it just from that much. I can see a lot of the form from there. A lot of the three-dimensionality is very clear. And I wanted to show you kind of what things look like when they're clean. But at the end of the day, yeah, you're just going to draw all the way through. And that way you can kind of understand like what the faces would look like. Like, for example, that central pillar there that builds the overall form. You can see I've drawn like the face on the bottom of it, or that flat side on the bottom of it as well, even though I can't see it. And the same is true of the very bottom as well. And it just helps you to understand how it sits on the ground, and where you're standing in space relative to it. It gives you perspective on the object naturally as well. So you can understand perspective without even doing perspective lines or anything like that. And as you can see, basically everything's made up of cylinders with this one. It's just really some cylinders, and the big cylinder on the right side here that I'm pointing out now, it's just a cylinder with like a big chunk chopped off the side of it to make sort of a flatter face, or like kind of a little bit rounded face. But yeah, at the end of the day, that's all it is. It's just a bunch of cylinders. Some are rounded, some are flat. Nothing complicated going on here, and yet it looks pretty complicated. But you're just putting a bunch of simple forms on another simple form, and essentially creating a more complex form by putting all the simple forms on a complex form. And this goes to show you that's basically what 99% of things are made up of. They're just a bunch of really simple forms put together to make a more complex form. Like, as you can see on the bottom right there, I've just kind of made like a coin shape almost from a cylinder. I flattened it, which is exactly what these disc shapes are made out of. And now you can go ahead and make coins or other flat things like that just by knowing the cylinder. You just stretch the cylinder, make one side bigger, make one side smaller, whatever. Next up is level 3. I think video games can be often very good for this. So here's an imp from old school RuneScape, a game I really love that's dear to my heart. I chose this because it's really hard to see the shapes in this one in some ways and easy in other ways. And it's partially just because of the way that they've done their shaders and other things. Now, what you don't want to do is go and just go around the shape like that. You're not learning anything by doing that. You're just learning to copy. What you do want to do is make these three-dimensional shapes like what I'm doing right now. Find like the little pockets that are facing away from the sun or the light, kind of like what I'm doing here. You can see like the shadow shapes. And just kind of try to envision the three-dimensionality of the form, what shapes each thing is made up out of. And a lot of the time with a more complex form like this, you'll have some simple shapes like these pyramids for the horns, and some more complicated shapes, like I don't even know what you would call those ears or the wings. The wings are kind of made up out of like triangles and squares. They're like semi-three-dimensional, sort of flat at the same time as well. And these arms are just like full of weird polygons that are attached to each other in strange ways. So you want to try to understand the form and really just break it down as much as you can into these shapes. And as you can see, I'm start slowly kind of getting an understanding. But then you see like the other hand on the other side, I'm like, I'm not even sure what to do with it, so I just leave it for now. I'm going to come back to it later. Honestly, like when it comes to really complex forms like these, even for me, it can be a really big challenge. So I still learn a lot from breaking them down. And from this, I'll be able to then, go back to my sort of memory bank and then, do my best to kind of create my own monsters in the future just from having a sort of understanding of how shapes can come together in these weird ways to create sort of living forms and other interesting kind of things that are maybe a bit more complex than even, let's say, a fire hydrant, which is already a semi-complex form. Anyway, yes, you just keep doing that. You try to break down all the different sort of faces on the object. You try to break down all the different shapes in it, and you can see, look at that. Wow, I mean, all we've really done is just kind of come up with the shapes in the thing and find like the lines where things meet, but you get the essence of the form just by doing that. You don't really need any of the details to be able to understand what you're looking at. And you'll be able to do this from imagination, if you do it enough times. And you don't even need to draw, like I said. You can just imagine things as you're looking at them on the street, and that'll do like 80% of the work for you. And then just, maybe once a week, try doing this. Or you can do it more often, and you'll, of course, get even better doing it that way. Like, break out your sketchpad while you're outside, or your iPad, or whatever else. And if you're curious about what drawing tablet to use if you're trying to get into digital art, I just made a video about that, so you can check out my channel. But really, it's just all about trying to understand like the different forms things are made up of. And then after you've done like the simple shapes, then you can go back and erase out, the places where maybe things are a little bit wrong, and just kind of get in these sort of sub forms like the sharpened edges and everything that I've done now. Because essentially what it is just a circle that's missing some faces, right? So I just chop off the faces after, and you've got these flat things. So anyway, that's level 3. That's basically as complex as it gets. You can pretty much draw anything by doing what I've just done here. And yeah, even if you're completely untalented like I am, like you saw how many mistakes I made in the process just trying to get it right. And there's so much weirdness going on with some forms, especially like this one, that you are going to make mistakes inevitably, or maybe not even mistakes, but things are going to be weird and different from how you're really seeing them a lot of the time. And it's going to take a while to kind of get a hang of doing it. But I mean, in the process, you're just going to learn so much. You're going to get so much better at drawing. You're going to get so much better at imagining, and you're just not really going to need a reference, honestly, after a certain point. I mean, you'll still need it, but you won't need nearly as much, especially with things that you're already used to seeing around in the outside world. You can do kind of like 80-90% from imagination and then bust out the references when you really need them. With animation and other things, it can be kind of a different story, but at least for like basic animations as well, like 90% of the time, which I do quite a bit of basic animation just for fun, 90% of the time I don't need any reference whatsoever, and I can get a pretty accurate visual of what something would look like. I'll go back and check a reference afterwards just to double check, and I'll be like, oh yeah, that looks just like looks like just like how I kind of rotated the form in my head. So even if you are using reference, like a lot of the time you don't have the other side of the object that you're looking at, or sometimes you'll generate like reference from AI or whatever else, which by the way, I have no problem with. I can get into AI in some other video, but you can generate from AI or something, and you just got one side of the form and you don't want to have to generate another side or look things up or whatever. And then you can just imagine it. Like if you've got a pyramid on one side, you can imagine what the other side of the pyramid looks like, especially if it's something that you're coming up with on your own. You know, it's great. Anyway, as you've seen, guys, I'm not even that talented or anything. Like, I just do this, and I can pretty much get by with 90% of my work that way. So I hope you enjoyed, guys. Remember to like, subscribe, comment, and let me know what you want to see. And that's basically it. So thanks again, guys. And please remember to also share with your friends. If you've got any friends that are artists or whatever that you think could benefit from this video too, why not share it with them and spread the love? Because at the end of the day, we are all a big part of this art community, and it's more fun and more merry when we've got more people making good stuff. I'll catch you later. Bye.